Welcome to your VSO show. This is a show that's out there mostly for veterans, but also for veterans' families and even other people who want to know what's going on in the world of veterans. So we have with us today the Whitman Veterans Service Officer, Declan Ware, who has come into us. Have you been here a year yet, Declan?
No. So I came on the team in, it was early March of this year.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, we want to give the people a chance to get to know you a little bit here. Now, first of all, you were actually brought up in Hanson.
Yep, that's correct. So, born in Boston, I was raised in Hanson, went to Hanson public schools all the way up until 8th grade. I did 1 year at the South Shore Voctech, transferred to Cardinal Spellman my sophomore to senior year.
Well, that's quite a transfer.
Oh, big! It was a big transfer, big time. And then, so graduated. I played football at Cardinal Spellman for 3 years. I graduated from Cardinal Spellman in 2016. After that, I did a very, very, very brief stint. I went to college for maybe 2 weeks, down in Pennsylvania. Dropped out really quick, and that kind of led me in my adventure of joining the Army to begin with.
What school were you going? Were you at down in Pennsylvania?
It was Susquehanna University down in Pennsylvania.
That's way out in the back country there.
It's way out in the back country. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, now you entered the Army, you went into the cavalry.
Yep.
Now, when people hear the word cavalry, they tend to think of horses. Mm-hmm. But the cavalry as a horse-mounted unit really hasn't existed since World War I.
Yep.
So what is the cavalry made up of now?
Yeah, so the cavalry today still fulfills the role of what the cavalry did, back in the 1800s, like Napoleonic style warfare. But when people think of cavalry, they think of, they could think, like tanks and stuff like that. Now, granted, we are a part of the armor branch, but we more fulfill the role now of reconnaissance and security. But it's not like security what like people tend to think. It's security in the aspect of like securing a whole unit. It's a mission set that the cavalry has to do. So it's not like, oh, we're just securing a building or something like that. It's, hey, we have to be if the unit's in a defense, hey, we are the forwardmost unit, and we're giving early warning for our infantry guys or our tankers, whoever the main effort is. We are out there to provide that early warning for our guys on our side.
The cavalry does not necessarily mean it's a bunch of tank guys that are charging forward, shooting the cannons off while they're moving, huh?
No. So really, at least when I was in, so there's 3 types of cavalry. So for the 3 types of brigade combat teams that the Army had. So you had the armored brigade combat team, the striker brigade combat team, and the infantry brigade combat team. In an armored brigade combat tem, that's when you have tanks and mechanized infantry. So the cavalry squadron was entirely mechanized. So all your cavalry scouts were mounted on Bradleys, and there was a tank troop in there as well. So you had 3 troops or companies, because that's in the Cav. That's what we'd call a company. It was a troop.
What's a Bradley?
A Bradley is it's an infantry fighting vehicle. So it's a tracked vehicle with a 25 millimeter Bushmaster gun on it, and as a tow launcher on it as well to fire tow anti-tank missiles off it.
It's a little bit heavier duty than a Humvee then.
A lot heavier duty than a Humvee. So those scouts, those Cav scouts, and those armor brigade combat teams, they had a lot of resources on hand to fight for reconnaissance, because off the platform they were on. And then the other 2 types, you have the striker, the brigade combat team. So all of your cavalry scouts are mounted on a striker, and all the striker is it's like an 8-wheeled kind of like I don't call it like an infantry fighting vehicle, but it's kind of like a battle bus. It's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah. And with 8 wheels, it's probably got some good traction.
Oh yeah, it's got some incredible traction. You can drive over trees, whatever you need to do. It can navigate some pretty rough terrain there. But yeah, you can cram a lot of people in the back. It's got a ramp in the back. It's a pretty good vehicle, very maintenance heavy, but it's a good vehicle. And then finally in the infantry brigade combat team, you got all of your scouts are mounted on Humvees, because the infantry brigade combat team is the lightest of all the brigade combat teams.
Yeah, and then the Humvee isn't all that light either, is it?
Oh, it's not. So it's up armored. And sometimes it is detrimental because it's very easy to get bogged down in mud in those things. It wasn't the ideal scout platform by any means, but it was our way of getting around quick. Sometimes we drop off our dismounts sometimes if that's what the mission required. So you got guys jumping out the back seats of the Humvee, and they can go out and do their dismounted observation posts and stuff like that with the trucks and support.
Okay, so as you went in there and became a scout,
mm-hmm.
and so you were one of those that was more or less in the Humvee type of deal where you would
mm-hmm.
get out and you would have a certain area you needed to patrol and
mm-hmm.
check it all out.
Yeah. So in my role as a scout, I went all the way from what they call it a 19 Delta 1 all the way to a 19 Delta 3, but I was really fulfilling the role of a 19 Delta 4, and all that means is like your level 1 is like your junior enlisted scout. So that's like your guys coming in, your junior enlisted guys, E1 to E4 typically, and they would fulfill the role of like scout driver. So they would drive the Humvee. Maybe they were the gunner on a Humvee, stuff like that. Dismounted scout. Your level 2 was your sergeant E5, and that was by doctrine, it was like a fire team leader for scouts. Level 3, they call it the section sergeant or the section leader. So it was a squad leader, but it was larger than a squad because the section leader, that staff sergeant, had to operate. He was in control of 3 Humvees and then a dismounted squad as well. So that staff sergeant was kind of maintaining a lot. The level 4, which is reserved for a sergeant first class or E7, that was the platoon sergeant of a scout platoon. And so I was a staff sergeant, but for years I was fulfilling the role of a scout platoon sergeant. So I had 3 lieutenants under me that I had to mentor and assist in operation in the platoon.
That sounds like some of those World War II movies that you run. The sergeant's the guy that knows everything, and the lieutenants are trying to learn from him.
Yeah, I think there's like some truth to it. I think a little bit. I was blessed. I had 3 incredible lieutenants. And they were very knowledgeable. 2 of the 3 were Ranger tabbed, so they were pretty high speed individuals. And I still talk to them to this day. We're still really good friends. But yeah, I'd say the sergeant, the staff sergeant, the sergeant first class. When we're talking like platoon level, those NCOs, the non-commissioned officers, they really prop up the platoon. They drive the discipline in the platoon or the section. They have a lot of practical knowledge because they've been out. They rose the ranks of doing the E1, E2, the level 1 jobs all the way up to where they're at now. So they have a lot of practical knowledge. Well,
you went from being the E1,
yep,
saying, to corporal in about a year.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
That seems, like kind of a fast step up there.
Yeah. So I don't want to pat myself on the back or anything, but I rose through the ranks pretty fast. I think it was just the way, just the state of like where the Army was at, and for 19 Deltas at least, for cavalry scouts, like the promotion points requirements were always like very low to get promoted to, like E4 to E5. And I think it's one of those things where, like, I just truly understood the mission. I understood what had to happen. So I kind of jumped up very, very fast. I got promoted to specialist E4. So I did E1 to E4 in it was about 18 months. And then I think I was only a specialist for maybe a few months, and then I was laterally appointed to corporal. So it's E4, it's still E4 to E4, but it was a lateral appointment to an NCO rank. So I was a corporal. This was way before the days of, you graduate the non-commissioned officer academy, you get automatic corporal. This is way before that. So yeah, I became a corporal, and I was a team leader as a corporal because I was fulfilling the job of an E5 at the time. Mm-hmm. And then I was a corporal. When I attended the Christopher Brevard NCO Academy there in Anchorage, Alaska. I graduated the NCO Academy, and I think it was about a month or so after I graduated the NCO Academy, I was promoted to the rank of E5. And then after I promoted to E5, that's kind of when things started ramping up big time for, my career.
I was just going to say, it was less than a year from the time you went from corporal till you became sergeant.
Yep, that's right. So it was, it was probably about maybe a little less than a year. Yeah, I went from corporal to sergeant E5. Yeah, and then really just because of the rules of the Army, the time and service, time and grade requirements, I was really slowed down E5 to E6 because the E6 time and service requirement was I think it was 47 months that you had to have time and service, and I got promoted to sergeant. It was like maybe 2 years and a little bit of change or so overall time and service. I made sergeant, so I had to wait a year and a half to get promoted to staff sergeant. But I think it was about 2 years. It was about almost 2 years on the dot from when I got promoted from E5 sergeant E5 to staff sergeant. So it was staff sergeant in 4 years and a little bit of change. I think I made it.
Now, you said in your biography that you were in Silver Spurs and then gold. What is the significance? Because with horses being gone now. Yep. What is the significance of spurs to the cavalry now? Yeah.
So in the cavalry, like I was saying, like we still maintain the traditions of like horseback, like all the traditions. Like we still do the same mission set. Yeah, we're not on horses anymore. We're on Humvee or Stryker or Bradley. But we're still fulfilling the mission. So a lot of the unit histories of these cavalry regiments and these squadrons that are still active to this day. I mean, all these units trace back to the 1800s, and so the history goes back. So when we're talking like a spur ride, what a spur ride is I don't want to call it a hazing event, because I wouldn't say that's really fitting, but it's voluntary, and what you do is you go out, you volunteer to get your silver spurs. And it could last anywhere from 24 to 96 hours typically, and you're called the shave tail, just because it's like the tradition of the old horsemen back in the 1800s. If you were a rookie cavalryman, they would shave the tail off of the horse, just so that they would know, hey, you're a rookie. But once you earn your spurs, that was really like, hey, this guy proved himself. So on Friday, if you earned your spurs, you'd wear your spurs in the unit area. It's a rite of passage that you go through a spur ride. Like I said, it's like 24 to 96 hours, and they keep you up constantly. And you're doing ruck marches and going to events of disassembling weapons, reassembling weapons, blindfolded or in like a dark tent. It's a big stressor. It's a rite of passage event, the spur ride you go through. And then on the back end of it, you're awarded the silver spurs. And from that point on, for spur rides going on in the future, you can take part, as a spur holder from that point on. And all the new shave tails that come in, you can, I don't want to say, like I said, I wouldn't say haze them, but you can, you can mold them and carry on the tradition.
I can understand why they would do that, because sometimes if you're in a combat issue, that kind of time is necessary. You have to be aware and be able to function for that amount of time sometimes and stay awake.
Yep. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's all. Nothing we ever did was like a ridiculous ask. It was always combat related. It was always cavalry, like history related. Like everything you would undergo everything was we did during the spur ride was crucial to the job. Like I want to say on mine, like we started off, we did like a PT test. It was like 0500, 5 in the morning PT test. You got done as soon as you crossed the finish line, of the 2 mile run. You came back and we took like a written test immediately. So you took like a cavalry history, like written test on paper. And then after that, we went straight into like an equipment layout, which, you have a packing list for the spur ride of, okay, this is what has to be in your rucksack, and everything. And so we do like a mass equipment layout. So that's what we did. And that kind of turned into, a smoke session a little bit, because what the spur holders, at least what they did for us was, they would say, like the first item on the packing list was the poncho. And so everybody put their poncho down, and okay, the second item, say it was like, I don't know, like uniform top, and people would fold it up the same exact way, put it in the top left corner, and they would just kind of fill out the poncho. Everybody, they call it dress right dress. Everybody's layout looks similar. And so what the spur holders did for us is they said, when we call off the item, everybody has to hold it above their head. And the first item was the poncho. So everybody just kind of pointed to the poncho, and they're like, oh, yep, it's right there. And they said, nope, we said hold it above your head. And so you had to everybody grab their poncho, and everybody's equipment went everywhere. And then now all of a sudden, they're calling out, all right, item number 2, this, and now everybody's stuff is in a big pile all over the place. And you can't make the time hack, start doing flutter kicks or something. That's kind of what it turned into. But that's kind of the stuff like on a spur ride. Like typically it's stuff like that is like what you'll see.
So is the golden spur again something along that line?
No, so the golden spur is earned from being in a cavalry unit deployed as part of a combat operation. So to earn the gold spurs, you have to be assigned to a cavalry unit, and then you have to go forward into you have to take part of a combat operation of sorts, and then from there you'll get you get a big document, and it says like, hey, Sergeant Declan Ware is awarded the gold spurs, this effective this date, and you get a big thing, and you get awarded the gold spurs, and yeah. I don't want to say we didn't call them the real spurs. We said the real spurs were the silver spurs, but the gold spurs were. It's a tradition thing, being awarded the gold ones if you have the opportunity to.
Yeah. So somewhere along in this time you were deployed over to the Middle East.
Yep. So it was right after I was promoted to E5, Sergeant E5, and I want to say it was July or August 2019. It was around that time period. It was about maybe a month after I was promoted as Sergeant E5. We deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Inherent Resolve Iraq. So I was there with Task Force Black Hawk in Kirkuk, and we were there from. It was about mid-end of August to July of 2020. It was a weird time because that's when COVID-19 first started popping up, and we had no idea what COVID-19 was. And so when we were leaving Iraq and then we were going back to Camp Arif John, Kuwait, everyone was like, you guys got to put a mask on, put on a mask. And we had no idea why or what COVID-19 was.
That was the same thing that was going on over here at that time too. We had no clue.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So it was a weird, very unique time period. Yeah. So, yeah, I was there in Kirkuk with Task Force Blackhawk, as part of overall Task Force Wolf that went to Iraq in support of Inherent Resolve. And all Task Force Wolf was the 1st Brigade of the 25th Infantry Division out of Fort Wainwright, Alaska. That unit got put on orders to go deploy in support of the operation, and then Task Force Blackhawk was like a subordinate of the overall Task Force Wolf in Iraq there. So yeah, it was just a lot of. It was a far cry from the days of early Iraqi freedom. We had to get permission from Iraqi federal police or the Iraqi military to go anywhere. A lot of times, they would kind of escort us around wherever we needed to go, to accomplish our mission. But it was far cry from the days of early Iraqi freedom for sure. Yeah.
Okay, and after you got back from Iraq, you were working to join the Airborne?
Yeah. So towards the end of that deployment in Iraq, my essentially my contract was coming up with the Army. My ETS date was coming up, which is expiration of time in service. It's when your contract expires. So my ETS date was coming up. And I had a decision, and I guess when I was deployed, it was kind of one of those things where I was high on life, and I was like, yeah, I'll re-enlist. I really at the time I really enjoyed it. I really did. So I re-enlisted for 5 additional years in the Army. And then, when you re-enlist, you have different options of stuff you can do when you re-enlist, re-enlistment incentives. And so, you do, for example, duty station of choice, or you could do a school of choice. There's different variety of different things you could do. So I did my reenlistment incentive was I did school of choice, and I did airborne volunteer. So after I reenlisted, I got an airborne school date, and so we got back from Iraq. It was July, like I said, it was July 2020 or so. We were put on a 2-week quarantine, and then by December, I was leaving Alaska, and then I was going to airborne school immediately at Fort Benning, Georgia. Went to airborne school immediately. It was 3 weeks of airborne school. Ground week, tower week, jump week, did all that, graduated, and then immediate report to Fort Bragg. I didn't know PCS leave, permanent change of station leave you can take, no PCS leave or anything. I just went straight from airborne school graduation, got in the car, drove straight to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Yeah. Now, people, I know this is what I would think, if you were going into the airborne, that's the paratroops, and that's not quite the same as the cavalry, is it? Yeah.
So what it is so when you in the airborne, you still have the same types of units, right? But airborne units are all infantry brigade combat teams, right? So in the 82nd Airborne Division, there was 3 infantry brigade combat teams subordinate to the 82nd Airborne Division. And so, and then, there was a cavalry unit in each of those brigades. So there's 3 cavalry units. It was 173 Cavalry, or 1st Squadron, 73rd Cavalry Regiment. There was 3rd Squadron, 73rd Cavalry Regiment, and then there was 5th Squadron, 73rd Cavalry Regiment. Each one of those cavalry squadrons were assigned to each brigade to perform the reconnaissance and security mission. So when I went through, I graduated airborne school, and then I was assigned to the 5th Squadron, 73rd Cavalry in the 3rd Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division. So it was we still did the same exact mission, of reconnaissance and security. So it was no change, but now we just had the additional duty of, we had to go jump out of aircraft and typically C-130 or C-17, and conduct our airborne mission. But then after the airborne operation, immediately transition into our cavalry mission after that.
So was this also sending the gear out of the planes too, parachuting the Humvees down? And
Yep. So it would include that as well. So they would call it like a heavy drop. So they would go and they would put like Humvees on like platforms and like stick a bunch of parachutes on it essentially, and then they would send, whenever the bird would pass over the drop zone, the first thing to go is, the ramp would open up, and then they would send all the Humvees out, all the vehicles out first, and then they would come around and do a second pass, and then all the personnel would jump out after that.
Well, it's a good thing they didn't do it the other way around. You could have been killed.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. No, it's there's one thing I learned, because I was an airborne guy later on in my career. Because I re-enlisted for it. I wasn't a junior enlisted guy growing up in that world. When I got there, I was a sergeant promotable when I got to the 82nd. And what I will say is, like, the professionalism of the jump masters and the riggers. I mean, those guys are on another level down there. Just like jump master school, like those guys. I mean, I tip my hat to those guys. They are very professional. They know what they're doing down there. So, I had my full faith and confidence in all those guys.
Yeah. And somewhere during that time, you actually got deployed to Poland. Yeah.
So it was January 21, graduated from airborne school, showed up immediately after graduation of Fort Bragg. From there, I was there for maybe a year, and then in February 2022, that was when the U.S. started getting all the intelligence, and it was all over the news, and it was all over Google. The U.S. started getting intelligence that, the Russians were amassing troops on the Ukrainian border. And so we got activated as part of the immediate response force to go over to Poland, and we probably had maybe 72 hours notice. It was a lot of, hey, we're going, hey, we're not going. There's a lot of back and forth. No, I don't think really anyone knew what was going on. And so I'd say we probably had like 24 to 72 hours notice. We just knew, hey, we might go, we might not go. But by the time we got the official word that we were going, it was less than a day, I think, that we got that. Hey, and so that was like a very stressful time period. I mean, we had all of our bags packed and everything, but when you get told you're going for real, on short notice, everybody's double checking their stuff, making sure they got everything. That's just how it is.
So your job in Poland was basically to help get gear through to the Ukrainians for trying to prevent that invasion.
So after we got after the U.S. made the public like announcement, hey, like no U.S. troops are going to Ukraine like whatsoever. We very quickly transferred to the role of just kind of logistical support for them. I'm not really going to go in and spill the tea too much on what we did there or anything, but it was logistical support for the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian military after that point on, and it would be transferring supplies from all over NATO, because it was very public, the transfer of supplies from NATO to Ukraine. So we were kind of there like helping facilitate that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a lot of your time in the service was kind of working up to Iraq and then coming back and then working up to Poland.
Yep.
And shortly after that was when you discharged
Yep.
yourself.
Yep.
And that was, I think you said 2025?
Yeah.
Early in 2025?
Yep.
How did you happen across this position as a VSO when you got out?
Yeah. So, we get back from Poland, and then from that point on, we trained for about a year or so, like normal operations, and then rumors started floating up, like end of 23, maybe very early 2024, that hey, the cavalry squadrons and the infantry brigades, like they're shutting down. It was just part of an army restructuring effort, and so it was probably July of 2024. All the cavalry units in the infantry brigades, they cased the colors. The units shut down for good. Everybody was put on orders, so everybody was PCSing, going all over the country, to their next unit. I think once that was going on, I kind of put in my head, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to get out. I think I'm going to get out of the Army when my contract expires here, and go try out the civilian world, the normal people world. Go try it out. And so when I was out processing out of Fort Bragg, there was a VSO came in as part of like an out processing brief, and so he was just talking his VSO thing, his whole thing, and so I was like, oh wow, like maybe I should get in, set an appointment to talk to that guy, and he was so busy, he had to be booked 6 months out, and so what that turned into is just turned into a Google search of like, hey, like, Massachusetts VSOs, like, let me go talk to somebody. And so, I went around, I met some VSOs in the area, and then I was like, hey, I think I want to give this thing a shot. And so it was I moved home back to Massachusetts, February of this year. And then, I saw that there was the job opening in Whitman, and I said, hey, I'm just going to go for it and just figure this thing out as I go. And so I went up there, and I had a whole resume done up, cover letter done up, and next thing you know, I get called in for an interview, and here I am as the Town of Whitman Veterans Service Officer.
Yeah. Okay, now that we've got that, now we want to get into a little bit about what you would like to do with this show in the future.
Yeah, I think my vision for the show in the future is kind of, I'd say it's twofold. I want to be able to bring in veterans so they can share their story, because every veteran in this town, across this Commonwealth, across the country, every veteran has a story.
Oh yeah.
And everybody has had some sort of crazy experience or something, and it's always I like hearing them. So I'd like to be able to bring on the veterans, and they can share their story. And then I think the other part of it is the second part is education, of talking about what veterans could be entitled to, and we go over the forms and stuff. It's all that stuff, because there's a lot of, especially when we're talking like claims and burials and DIC benefits, for like surviving spouses, stuff like that. There's a lot of mystery, I think, behind a lot of this stuff. So I think if I could kind of clarify any of this stuff, that's what I would like to use this platform for.
Well, that's kind of like what I think is one of the most necessary things, because so many guys, they seem to have this attitude that they don't deserve the benefits they're getting.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that they earn those.
Yes. Yeah.
And they need to learn that. And also, having the stories is a way to get these guys to bond together too. Because, there's so many veterans out there, and they kind of separate themselves into their own particular era.
Yep.
And if they could listen and hear what the guys from other eras were going through, they'd find out that they didn't have those big differences that they thought they had.
Yeah. I would tell any veteran ever, like, you you have earned the benefits. Like you those benefits that you don't think you're entitled to, like no, like you have earned those by your time and your dedication, to the country and whatever branch you served in, to the Department of Defense. You did your time, you did it honorably. Like no, like these are your benefits, and if I could get more people taking up those benefits, that'd be great. I think that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
Is people need to be aware of that. Hey, they're entitled to these things. So if I could do anything, it would be education for them, because they are most certainly entitled to these things, and they need a file for them.
From what I have heard from people, the forms that the VA has using causes an awful lot of consternation, because they're not always sure which form they need to fill out.
Yeah, that's right. So the VA is just, I think it's just the way that the system is set up. Is there's a form for everything. Typically, what you see if somebody wants to do like an initial disability claim, a lot of people just think, oh, well, I'm just going to fill out the 526 and it's good enough. And then in all reality, it's not just good enough. You need the 2122, the power of attorney. You need the 4138. You need your personal statement to back up your claim and give any other like relevant information on that 4138. You're doing the 4142/4142A, which is it's like the release of information where it's like you consent for like the VA to go and like, hey, they can pull my medical records from this treatment facility or wherever it is. There's a whole bunch of things that I think the VA kind of makes it a little complicated. I wish it could be streamlined a little bit. But ultimately, I think that's why having VSOs in our municipalities, it's so important, because we're the ones that know these things. We're the ones that know these forms, and we're the ones that we know how to navigate the system. And I think veterans kind of get scared off because there's so many forms and all this stuff.
Now, I know you just you mentioning all those numbers for different forms was starting to make me dizzy.
Yeah,
and I'm not even after any of those benefits.
Yeah.
So. Okay, well, Declan, I want to thank you. This show is yours to do with as you will. I'm only here to be in the background to help you do it.
Okay.
So if I'm ever here on camera again, it should be a big surprise to both of us. So thank you, Declan, for coming
Paul,
in.
thank you.
We learned a lot about you, and I think you're going to do a wonderful job with this show.
All right, thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you all for tuning in to your VSO show. And hopefully we'll be able to get our compatriot from Hanson on here once in a while.
Yeah.
He's one of these guys that's such a busy guy, you never know where you're going to find him.
Yep. I'm all over the place, so I'm looking forward to the future here.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all so much, and we'll see you the next time on your VSO show.